Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I've got this kind of interest in technology and innovation that's taking place particularly in the healthcare front, and came across this company here called Harvard. Let's see, what's it called? Harvard Apparatus Regenerative Technology. And it's a technology that was initially developed for the purpose of treating trachea cancer. And it's one of those things, wow, trachea cancer, really? Reality is any part of your body can suffer from cancer. That's just the reality. And it's one of those weird things. We don't hear about it often. But then they found that it has implications in so many other different areas. David Green is with this company. And David, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kevin. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you. Real quickly, kind of give us an overview of what your company is all about. You got to be able to do a better job than I just did.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. So what we do is we create regenerated organs for transplant. And the first organ we've been successful with is the trachea, as you mentioned. I know this sounds a little bit like science fiction. You probably think you've seen this in a movie somewhere. But this actually is medical reality. We have treated 8 human patients, so far with successful regenerated tracheas.
See, that to me is just incredible. So tell me, how does this happen? How does this work?
So the way it happens is we make a plastic replica of the patient's own windpipe, and that's done with a technique that creates a very porous scaffold in the size and shape of the patient's natural trachea, the part that's been damaged, usually by trachea cancer. And then what we do is we take bone marrow from the patient, and we use the cells from the bone marrow to seed that scaffold with the patient's cells. We incubate it in a bioreactor for 2 days, and then when the cells have grown into that scaffold, it is implanted into the patient's neck once the old damaged trachea is taken out. That's how it's done.
And so that helps minimize the possibility of rejection, I assume?
That is exactly right, Kevin. So normally...
See, I've watched enough of these sci-fi movies, so, I'm sort of an expert. But anyway, go right ahead.
Right. So you're absolutely right with organ donor transplant, so what you might think of for a heart transplant or a kidney transplant, where the donor is different to the patient, then there is a rejection problem. And the patient's immune system will reject the tissue, the organ coming from the donor. And to avoid that, those patients have to take immunosuppressive drugs or drugs that suppress their immune system. Those drugs are expensive, and they also weaken the immune system of those patients. So even something like a simple infection, like a simple cold, could end up killing those patients because their immune systems have been suppressed by those drugs. We do not need those drugs because we use the patient's own cells.
You use the patient's own cells to regenerate a trachea.
That's correct.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that just kind of blows my mind. And it takes how long?
Well, the incubation of the cells on the scaffold takes only 2 days, but you ask an insightful question because really this has been 25 years in the making. It's been about 25 years now since scientists and doctors first started growing human cells outside the body on 3-dimensional scaffolds. And it's taken 25 years to get to the point where you can really treat patients with this approach.
It sounds like you almost use like a CAD system. Is that right? Kind of like
a what? Sorry?
A CAD, C-A-D, a system like that engineers use to develop, build something in advance. It almost sounds like something like that, no?
Actually, we do use those kinds of engineering design tools like CAD systems, computer-aided design tools, to create the scaffolds. We do exactly that.
That's incredible. And so, how many? You've done 8 of these, and what is the longest of the 8 in terms of how long it's been?
The longest follow-up actually is 5 years, and in fact, that patient passed the 5-year mark this summer. And the follow-up work on her was published in a major medical journal called The Lancet. It's one of the world's top medical journals. And that's really nice for us to see. It's really nice to see the long-term follow-up on the patients. She has an excellent quality of life. She has a family. She has a job. She has children. She's really living a very normal, healthy, happy life because of this therapy.
And is her life different in any way than it would otherwise be?
Is her life different?
Yeah, I mean, her quality of life, has it changed at all in a negative way? Because, I mean, obviously it's better than the alternative, which is death, but, or whatever the primitive system was before. But does she function like she would anyone else when it comes to this area?
I think the only negative is she gets a lot more calls from journalists.
Ah, wow. So her quality of life otherwise is awesome. What did they do before this?
Correct.
What did they do before this technology?
Trachea cancer is one of the most fatal of all types of cancer. The average time that someone survives trachea cancer from the time they're diagnosed is only 10 months. It is far more deadly than breast cancer. It's far more deadly than prostate cancer. So that, unfortunately, is the outcome for patients diagnosed with trachea cancer. They almost all die, and they usually die within a year.
Okay. And it seems to me that part of, and so that's amazing. This is 5 years old, but I've never heard it. That's the thing I'm finding extraordinary. Is it because...
Well, you need to get out a little more, Kevin. It was on the front page of the New York Times. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It was on the Today Show. So maybe you just need to read a little wider.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, those are pretty. I think I just been slammed on in my own show. That's embarrassing. But anyway, yeah, because I do kind of keep an eye for this stuff, so I find it fascinating. I want to give the website for people out there. How common is this form of cancer? I'm assuming it's not very.
That's exactly right, Kevin. This is actually a very rare form of cancer. About 800 Americans per year get trachea cancer. It is, in fact, one of the rarest types of cancer.
Harvard Apparatus Regen, and that's REGEN, harvardapparatusregen.com. And are you going to see this transfer into other organs, this technology?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. We are already working with major hospitals around the world to develop the technology into the esophagus. The esophagus is the other tube that goes down from your mouth. The esophagus goes down to the stomach, the trachea goes down to the lungs. But they are both basically long, hollow tubes. And we are working with several research groups around the world to bring this kind of technology to repairing and replacing the esophagus as well as for the trachea.
Man, that's amazing. It sounds very sci-fi. I like it. So of the 8, how are all 8 doing?
8 patients have been treated. 6 of them are still alive. The 2 that died of unrelated causes to the trachea transplant. When you do these surgeries, you're doing them on what are called compassionate use cases. So these are patients who've used all kinds of therapy that are available to them, and they've failed all those therapies. Those therapies have not been able to cure the patients. And so they really face a life or death decision. And under those circumstances, you can get these emergency or compassionate use cases approved by the government. Both the U.S. government and other governments in Europe have approved these surgeries. So that's the only way you can treat patients like this. And so these patients are inherently very sick at the time they are treated. And so 2 of those patients, unfortunately, have passed away after the surgery, but neither of them was due to the trachea transplant itself. It was due to the underlying conditions because they were so sick at the time that they were actually treated.
Yeah, the problem is that when you're sick, you get sicker. And so you develop, disease in other areas. Your body gets weakened in general. All the treatments that you used that didn't work up to then devastated your body, be it chemotherapy or radiation or whatever they did. And so it's really challenging. Man, this is fascinating stuff. And even though you slammed me in my own show, I found it interesting and entertaining and informative all at once. So I hope people get more information. Harvard Apparatus Regen, that's REGEN, harvardapparatusregen.com. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
Great topic, great story. When we come back, much more for you. Stay tuned to it right here on The Price of Business.